Okay, so we're going to be looking at a passage where Jesus says, if you have faith the size of a what?
Mustard seed.
Mustard seed, you will do what?
Say to this mountain,
Say to this mountain what?
move from here to there.
Okay, all right. So, if you have faith as the size of a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain to move. So the passage we're looking at, Matthew 17, verse 20. Matthew 17, verse 20. And Matthew 17, verse 20 reads, are you guys there?
Yes.
Okay, Matthew 17, verse 20 reads, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Now, when you read this text, what do you think? What are you thinking when you look at this text?
It's over exaggerated.
It's over exaggerated. Okay, what's over exaggerated?
What little faith can do, like moving mountains.
Okay, so it's like just something that
Impossible.
sounds very impossible.
Yeah,
okay?
and
Sounds very
fantastical.
impossible. Okay, all right. Fantastical or sensational. Okay, all right. Anyone else? What do you think when Jesus says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will remove mountains? Any other thoughts? Okay. So I'll go back to Harold. Really out there, what Jesus could say.
Oh, did
Sorry,
I
Pastor, you talking to me?
hear mine?
Yeah. Why do you think it sounds so out there, or sounds too grand of an idea?
Mountains can't move, like they're inanimate objects, and even if God can move it, like there are creatures there that need it to be there. There might be people there that need it to be there. So
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Was there another comment that somebody else was going to say?
I thought I had a comment. I thought I said mine, but I think I was muted. I'm not sure. But I said something like the mustard seed, it's so small. It's real. I've seen one before. It's really, really tiny.
Yes.
So if your faith is that small, how can it move something as big as a mountain?
Sounds too sounds too impossible.
Yeah. It seems like it should be the other way.
All right. Yeah, exactly. You should have a faith the size of a mountain to even make a dent like a mustard seed. Yeah. Okay. What questions come to give me some questions that you would ask. No question? Give me
Pertaining to
a
the,
question that we can ask based on this text.
Was God being literal?
Was God being literal? Or who's saying this is Jesus, right? Was Jesus being literal, or was he just using a figure of speech? Is that right? Is that the question? That's a good question. Is this just a figure of speech? Is it just an expression? Or are we meant to take this literally? That is a very good question. In fact, that was one of my questions that I came up with as well. So very good. Anyone else? Any other questions that this verse conjures up? Okay. You guys are quiet today. Let's turn to another passage. Luke chapter 17, verse 6. And I would like someone to read it this time. Luke chapter 17. What verse did I say?
6.
6. Luke 17, verse 6. Someone read that, please.
So the Lord said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you.
Okay. What is similar to the previous verse? Element of familiarity is still there. Am I?
You're in and out.
Yeah, I'm told. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what element is in this text that was in the last text?
The mulberry tree.
The mulberry
Mustard
tree?
seed. The mustard seed.
The mustard seed.
Mustard.
The mustard seed was the same thing that was mentioned last verse, right?
Right.
And so the mustard seed is mentioned again here in this verse.
Mm.
What is being moved in this?
A tree.
Mhm.
A tree. Now, some translations say it is the mulberry tree. My translation says sycamine tree, sycamore tree, right?
Mm.
So, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, Jesus says, you can move mountains and you can uproot trees. Talking about here? Is Jesus talking about telekinesis? Do you guys know what telekinesis is?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. You guys don't know. You guys know what telekinesis is? Moving things with your mind.
yes.
Stuff from
You're breaking up.
You, all you have to do is
Think.
faith. Okay, so let me do this. Let me do this. Perfect. You can do and landscaping business for free. Is that what it's talking about? Can
Hmm?
you guys hear me?
Mm,
You repeat that?
Hey,
Okay, so is this talking about telekinesis, or when you have faith, you're able to make it big in the landscaping and demo?
Breaking up.
He's gone.
yeah, the video's freezing and it's really choppy.
Okay. See what I can do here.
Recording in progress.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, it kind of echoed. You've got
Okay.
your other video still going.
Yeah.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
No echo?
Echo.
No.
Man,
Okay, good. All right. So back to what I was saying. When Jesus is saying with faith, you can move mountains and you can uproot trees, was he talking about telekinesis with faith?
No.
Was he talking about you can use dynamite? You don't need dynamite to destroy a mountain anymore. You can just use faith. You don't need a landscaping business to cut down a tree. Your faith will do it for you, so you can make it big in your own personal demolition and landscaping business if you have faith. Is that what he's talking about here?
No.
Although that would be cool. But, you know, it's interesting. Jesus says this twice. Actually, not twice. He says it 3 times. The first time is where? Matthew chapter
Okay.
17, verse
20.
20. That's talking about the mountain being moved, right? The second time, Luke chapter 17, verse 6. That's the sycamore tree. And did you know he says this again the 3rd time? Matthew 21. So it's like several chapters after Matthew 17. He says it again. Matthew 20, 21, 21. Someone read that for us, please. Matthew 21, 21.
So Jesus answered and said to them, assuredly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what was done to the fig tree, but also if you say to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, it will be done.
Okay. So Jesus, does he mention it again?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And what do we notice about the context of when he says this? He's talking about this When does he say this? What's happening in chapter 21?
It just happened after the withered fig tree
Okay, why did the fig tree wither?
because it was not producing fruits.
So
So
why did it wither?
cursed it. Jesus cursed it.
Jesus cursed it. Okay, that's right. So Jesus cursed it, and that's when he mentions this. Okay, the same passage of this very story where Jesus curses the fig tree is found in Mark chapter 11, verse 23. Okay, Mark chapter 11, verse 23. Okay, so when you look at that, it's interesting. The words of Jesus, and let's so what where are the three verses that mention Jesus saying this, where he mentions mustard seed and things moving?
Oh,
Matthew 17:20,
Matthew 17:20,
Luke 17.
17:6,
6,
and Matthew 21:23.
Matthew 21:21, and Mark 11:23. That's the same thing, right? Mark 11:23 and Matthew 21:21, same story. Okay, so the question is, if you have mustard-sized faith, you can move mountains or uproot trees. If that is true, are we to understand this literally or metaphorically happening?
Metaphorically.
Okay, so how many of you guys say it's metaphorically? Okay, show of hands. Or okay, I heard two people say metaphorically. How many of you guys think is literal?
Yes.
Okay, we have one yes. Okay, anyone else?
Don't know.
Okay, huh?
could be literal.
It could be literal.
Yeah.
I think it's literal. Yes.
Okay, how many of you guys think it could be both?
I do.
Okay, some people said both. Okay, all right. So let me ask you this question. Very important to look at how things are worded in the Bible. Notice let's take the first verse. What's the first verse?
Matthew 17:20.
Matthew 17:20. Jesus says, and let me turn there, Matthew 17:20, for the sake of, can you guys see that? Yeah. Okay, Matthew 17:20, right? Jesus says, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say unto what?
The mountain.
Say unto what mountain?
This mountain.
This mountain. Notice, Jesus, does he say a mountain?
No.
Does he say any mountain?
No.
Does he say, is he like just being general here, or is he actually identifying a specific mountain?
Identifying.
Okay, so like, for example, if I was with you in a room and I say, Maxine, I want you to get me a chair, what would Maxine do?
Get a chair.
Yes, yeah.
What chair?
Any
Get
chair.
Any
Good
chair, right? Because I just
Yeah.
said, get me a chair. But if I say, Maxine, get me this chair,
It's a particular one.
is there a difference?
It's a
Yes,
particular
yes.
chair thing.
It's a particular chair, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want you guys to scan those three verses we looked at. Does Jesus say this? Well, we know Matthew 17:20, he says this mountain. So he's specifically talking about a specific mountain? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Does he do that again in the other verses regarding the tree and the other mountain statement?
He also said this more sycamore tree.
He
This
says it again, right? He says this sycamine tree. He doesn't say a sycamore tree, right? He says this sycamore tree. Okay. And what about the next one?
This
Matthew 20.
mulberry tree.
Matthew 21:21. Does he also say this mountain?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so notice he's saying this mountain, this tree will be removed in yonder place or wherever, right? So it's interesting. The question is, what mountain was Jesus talking about if he is saying this mountain? What tree was he talking about when he's saying this tree? What do you guys think?
It is referring to the mountain and the tree where he is currently at,
Okay, so
or within
yeah.
the close proximity of him.
Okay, yes, it's in close proximity of him. So where is he?
In the nature.
What mountain could it be?
Mount
The Mount of Olives.
Huh?
So
Zion.
at the
Mount
Mount of Olives.
Okay, how do you know that, Jeff?
I'm looking back at the beginning of chapter 21.
Uh-huh.
They drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethpage at the Mount of Olives when Jesus sent 2 disciples.
Uh-huh. Yes, very good. So in that passage, what passage is that?
21:1.
21:1. Okay, so that's the third statement Jesus said, right? So he was in Jerusalem. And the mountain near Jerusalem is
Mount.
Mount of Olives, where Christ and his disciples were, or
Is
they
it-
were passing over at least very near it. Now, we don't know for sure, we don't know for certain if it is the Mount of Olives, okay? But it could be, okay? It could be the Mount of Olives that he's talking about, or it could be any other mountain nearby. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're not saying that it is the Mount of Olives for certain. We're saying it's quite possible it could be that mountain or any other mountain near it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So fair enough. We're just speculating, but we're speculating based on what the Bible gives us, some hints that the Bible gives us. Very good, Jeff. What about the other first statement, Matthew chapter 17, verse 20? He says this mountain, but where was that mountain that he's talking about? If you,
Is that where the transfiguration?
two people are talking at the same time, I didn't hear.
Is it
Where-
Mount Transfiguration?
Could it be a Mount of Transfiguration? Oh, why do you say that, Harold?
It's this in that context. This is Matthew 17. This is about the transfiguration.
Yeah. So Jesus, when he says this, where did he come down from? He came down from the mount where he was
Mhm.
transfigured, right?
Yeah.
So it could be, some people say it could be Mount Tabor or Mount Hermon. Okay. But that's not for certain. Okay. Or it could be any other mountain nearby Mount Hermon or Mount Tabor. Right. And also it says that the area that Jesus was in was Caesarea Philippi, which is where Mount Hermon and Mount Tabor is. Okay. So when Jesus was saying, you can say to this mountain, remove, it could be either one of those mountains or another mountain like it nearby. Yes?
Yeah.
All right. Now, the sycamore tree, you know, it's interesting. The sycamore tree is a little more harder to identify because trees are in abundance everywhere, right? A mountain can be like a landmark, but trees, you go outside, there's so many trees.
They were in Bethpage in that
Yeah.
story.
Now don't nobody, I hope nobody says, well, it must have been the sycamore tree that Zacchaeus was up on. Now that we're just speculating, like that's far off left field. All right. Because that's the only sycamore tree we know of in the Bible, but that doesn't mean that's what Jesus was talking about. I highly doubt that. Okay. But so Jesus saying this tree, this mountain will be removed if you have size of mustard seed. Okay. So is Jesus saying literally these mountains, Mount Olives, Mount Hermon, sycamore tree, wherever it is, can be removed if you have mustard
Faith of a
seed,
mustard seed.
like faith?
Mhm.
You know, what do you guys think?
You have faith like a mustard seed.
Yeah, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you can remove these mountains. And notice he doesn't say you can remove mountains. He says you will remove this mountain on 2 occasions. You will remove this sycamore tree. So what's the point of Jesus removing mountains or saying that we can remove mountains? And furthermore, he says what will happen to the mountain?
Going to the sea.
Okay, which verse says that it goes into the sea?
17, 20.
No, 17:20 says it'll be moved to a different place. Okay, but which verse says that it'll be moved into the sea?
21 Matthew.
Which one?
Matthew 21.
Yeah, Matthew 21:21, right? It actually says that the mountain will be removed and cast into the sea and it'll be done. It says in Luke 17, verse 6, that the sycamore tree can be uprooted and it'll be planted into the sea. Okay, now, can this really happen? If you have itty bitty faith like mustard seed,
Mm.
can all this stuff happen?
That's what Jesus said. Have that kind.
That's what Jesus said, so therefore it should be true, right?
Yes.
Has anyone moved Mount
No.
Hermon or any mountain nearby? Has anyone in the history ever moved Mount of Olives?
No.
Nothing yet, I guess.
Not yet. So you mean to tell me that nobody has throughout the
That can
history
be-
since Jesus said this has mustard seed like faith? Not even that itty bitty mustard seed like faith? Is that what you're telling me?
Jesus.
Jesus, did Jesus move mountains?
He could have.
He wants
Yes, you can.
He didn't though.
Yeah. Do we have any account where Jesus did?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think the mountain and the sycamore tree represent obstacles in your life or problems.
Yeah. Obstacles in your life or problems. Okay, how do you know that?
Well, the mountain and the sycamore is a metaphor for that, I think. That
Okay.
if you have just a little bit of faith that Jesus can help you in whatever situation you're in, it will happen.
Okay. You know, I've heard a lot of people say things like, oh, that mountain represents the multitude of sins that God casts into the sea. Micah 7:19. I've heard also what Sharon said. Other people say, oh, that's your mountain of problems that will go into the sea. But I'm going to be honest with you, those two things sound very nice. But where in the Bible does it say anything about what these things represent? Is there anywhere in the Bible that says what these things represent? Huh?
Like, you mean,
Is there anywhere in the Bible that mentions what the mountain and tree represents clearly?
I'm not sure,
Okay, not sure.
but I'm sure it is.
Okay. You know, it's interesting when Jesus said statements like these, it's like sometimes you have to kind of see what the deeper meaning is behind it all. Sometimes we could kind of get fixated on the mountain itself or the tree itself and what that means. But could it be that Jesus is just kind of saying something for face value?
No,
No?
I don't think so.
Okay, why?
The only reason I say that, because it said if you have this faith, and whenever Jesus, when he talked to the lady that wanted her daughter healed, and when he talked to the centurion who wanted his servant, he said, I've never found so great a faith. So in my thoughts, to have that kind of faith is amazing. And I think most of us realize that having that kind of faith is something that you don't just get, you know? But I
Okay.
could,
But is Jesus saying that you need to have great faith for big things to happen?
No,
He's not saying that. What is he saying you should have? At least what?
The size of a mustard.
Like mustard seed. So he's not talking about great faith here. Is he?
just a little faith.
He's talking about, yeah, a little faith, like really minuscule little faith. That's what he's talking about. But yeah, you're right. He contrasts the mustard seed in another instance where he talks about great faith, but this is not what he's talking about here. Is he? He's not talking about great faith. And like what Harold said earlier, Harold says it'd make more sense if we had a mountain of faith. Then we can do amazing things. But that's not what Jesus said, does he? He says if you have faith the size of a mustard, very small faith. So, what is Jesus saying here? What do you think Jesus is trying to convey here? I think, like from my study, and I could be wrong, I don't see anywhere in the Bible that tells us what that mountain or that tree is. Clearly, it doesn't clearly identify what that mountain or tree that can be removed is. Okay, which makes me think, is that really the focus of these verses? Is the focus of these verses moving the mountains?
The faith.
The focus is on the faith, right? It's on the. So, what is Jesus saying here? He's saying if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can make a mountain move. you can make a tree, a sycamore tree uproot. And by the way, sycamore tree, do you know sycamore tree, to uproot a sycamore tree, it's quite impossible.
I've
They ha-
seen a sycamore tree in the Holy Land, and it's very big, bigger than a mango tree.
Yeah, it's not just because of the size either. It's
Yes.
because
Deep
it's
root.
it has deeply entrenched root systems that make it very hard to get rid of. It's very hard to get rid of a sycamore tree, right? And for Jesus to say, you could tell the sycamore tree to uproot and it could go into the sea. What?
Maybe if you have just a little faith, God can still work and do great things through you if you just have a little faith and believe.
Okay. Okay, so little faith and belief. Now, okay. Anyone else want to add to that?
I think it's not the quantity, but I think Jesus is talking about the quality.
Yes. Not the quantity, but the quality of faith. Okay. You want to elaborate on that more?
Because I think that when we read Matthew 10 about Jesus sending out the disciples to heal, they couldn't heal because they did not have faith in him. I'm getting lost now.
Okay, because they didn't have.
They
Okay,
didn't have faith because, like in John 14 verse 12, Jesus tells them, I tell you the truth, anyone who believes in me will do the same works I have done, and even greater works, because I am going to be with the Father.
Okay.
You can ask for anything in my name and I will do it.
Okay, that's good. But what I want you guys to do, you remember those 3 verses we looked at. I want you to tell me what the context of each of those verses are, because those contexts of those verses tell us why it says these things. Okay, and so the context provides the hint why Jesus brings it up. So let's do an exercise. Let's all look at the first passage. What's the first passage? Matthew 17, what?
20.
What was the context that led Jesus to say, if you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, remove, and it will remove?
The disciples came.
They couldn't cast the child. They couldn't cure the child. And they asked him why.
Okay, cure the child or something. It's not curing. What were they trying to do?
Rebuke the demon.
They're trying to cast out
Cast
the
it
demon
out. Mhm.
out of the boy, right? This happened while Jesus and his 3 disciples were up on the mountain.
Transfiguration.
Okay, the Mount of Transfiguration. They were up on the mountain, they come down, and they see the site where the disciples are having a hard time casting out the demon from this boy, right? And then Jesus cast them out. And then they asked him, why couldn't we cast him out? And what does Jesus say in verse 20 of Matthew 17?
Because of your unbelief.
Because of your unbelief. Okay, unbelief. So he says, and after he says that, he says what? Verily I say unto you, what?
You have faith
It will
as
be impossible. Nothing
Verily
will
I say unto you, what does he say?
you have faith like mustard.
If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed. So in other words, unbelief is because of your unbelief. And because of their unbelief, they don't even have faith the size of a mustard seed, right? And so Jesus is talking about that this is dealing with casting out the demon. This was impossible. And Jesus says, if you have faith the size of the mustard seed, nothing shall be impossible unto you.
Mm.
But the following text says what? Verse 21.
By
Does-
prayer and fasting. It will only
Does
happen.
not go out
when-
except by prayer and fasting.
Yeah, this does not happen without prayer and fasting. So this tells us, do you guys want to have faith the size of a mustard seed?
Yes,
So what do you need to do?
Prayer.
pray and fast.
Pray and fast, but also you need to
Have faith as a mustard seed.
believe. You need to believe. Unbelief kept them from casting out that demon, right? So you need belief and prayer and fasting. Interesting prescription Jesus provides for us. Okay. The next passage, what's the context in Luke 17, verse 6? Luke 17, verse 6. What is the context?
That comes right after, if your brother sins against you, you forgive him 7
Okay.
times. And
Seven,
then
what verse is that?
17:4.
Oh, 74. Okay. But look at the verse
5. Increase our
above,
faith.
verse 5.
Yeah, the disciples asked Jesus
Increase in faith.
to increase their faith.
That increase our faith. What does Jesus say in response to that?
If you
Okay,
have
I will
faith-
increase your faith. Is that what he says?
If you have faith as a mustard seed.
Okay,
They asked for him to increase their faith.
right. So the context is the disciples asked them to increase their faith. But what does Jesus say in response to that? Does he say, oh, yes, you need a lot of faith. I will definitely increase your faith because you asked. So be it unto you. Is that what he did?
No, he said,
That
So you have to
even if
have
you
the
you
faith,
have
have
faith as a
Very
mustard
small
like
little
a
mustard
mustard
seed.
seed.
Right.
then you can.
So in other words,
Yes.
Jesus is in response to the disciples, he's saying it is not about it's not necessarily about you increasing your faith, but it's you having the best quality of faith, even if it's small size of mustard seed.
Hmm.
So the disciples were asking, increase our faith, but Jesus is saying,
You don't
you don't
have
have to be, you don't have to be focused on that.
Mhm.
With the faith you already have, you can do things like tell the sycamore tree to remove, and it'll be removed. So the disciples say, give us more faith, because he thinks more faith is what's going to make us be able to do great things. But Jesus says, no, you just need to use a little faith. The little faith you have, the size of a mustard seed, and you can do whatever you tell the sycamore to do, it'll do. Right? So
So
contrast.
was he saying, excuse me, I'm sorry. Was he saying that they don't have any faith, or they don't have any faith?
Okay, let's answer that question. Is it true that people have no faith?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
No.
No?
Have faith, but then.
What does the
you have-
Bible say?
They
The
have
Bible-
faith.
Oh, everyone is given a measure of faith.
Possible.
The Bible says that God has given everyone
A
Measure
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 of faith.
faith,
You're of faith.
right? So none of us, according to the Bible, are destitute of faith,
Okay.
right? So we are all given a measure of faith,
Okay.
but it's not the
Amount.
quantity or amount of faith that we should worry about, but it should be utilizing what we have.
Okay.
This is like the story of the talents. Remember? The last servant, he was saying, well, I only got 1 talent, so I'm just going to bury it. I don't have as much as those other guys, so I'm going to bury it. You know, and he got reproved for that, right? It's not about how much faith you have. It's about what you do with that faith. Even if it's little, even if little is given, how do you apply faith? That's what matters. That's what matters, right? And so it is interesting that Jesus says, if you have faith of the grain of a mustard seed, you can tell the sycamore tree to move. Okay. Now, the next verse. What's the other verse?
21. Matthew.
Matthew.
Matthew 21:21. What is the context of Matthew 21:21? We kind of covered it earlier.
Fig tree.
The fig tree, the cursing of the fig tree. Okay, but let's read Matthew 21:21, because is there any hints there that provide to us how we ought to secure that mustard seed like faith? Okay, we learned, let's review. We learned in Matthew 17, verse 21, it says, you must believe and you should pray and right?
22 says the thing, all things whatsoever you ask in prayer, believing you shall receive.
So believing you shall receive. Okay. So it says believing you'll receive, but before that, what does it say? You're missing the beginning part. Start from the beginning. Don't jump to the end. If you have faith and what?
Doubt.
Doubt.
No
Doubt not. So stop right there. Is it possible to have faith but still doubt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just said.
Yeah. That's what Jesus is saying here, right? The word if is conditional statement, right? He says, if you have faith and doubt not, so in other words, can you doubt even though you have faith?
Yes.
Yes. Is there still a possibility of doubt even though you have faith? Yes. Right? But he's saying, but doubt not, right? Because mind you, we all have a measure of faith, right? We all have a measure of faith. So if you have faith, we all have a measure of faith, and you doubt not, right? Then you could tell this mountain to move. It'll be cast into the sea, and it shall be done. All things, whatsoever you ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive. So in other words, you have faith, don't doubt, but believe. And in prayer, and ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive. Do you guys see those key words there? Right? So you have faith, but don't doubt. And don't doubt when you ask, but believe when you ask, and you shall receive. Okay? So that's the prescription that Jesus gives us. Now, the other passage that is the same event, the same as Matthew 21:21, Mark 11 verse 23 gives us more information for prescription. Mark 11:23 says what?
It says,
I say
Or
to you,
so-
"But surely I say to you, whoever says to this mountain,
Do not doubt in its heart, but believe."
it does not."
Shall be cast into the sea and shall not what?
doubt in his heart.
Doubt in his heart. Again,
Yes.
doubt is an obstacle that needs to be removed, right? But shall believe that
Those things will be done.
those things which he said shall come to pass. So in other words, he says what? Believe what?
Say,
Come to pass.
Same things.
Believe the things that you said shall come to pass. Okay, so notice in all these instances, Jesus says, this mountain this tree, this mountain, but he also says, if you shall say to this mountain, if you shall say to this tree, if you shall say to this mountain. So in other words, what do you see happening in all three?
Speaking it.
You're speaking it. You're speaking it. So in other words, when you have faith, guess what? When you have faith, you remove doubt, any ounce of doubt. You have faith, you believe, you believe what you're going to ask for is going to happen. Your words suddenly have authority and power. Did you guys catch what I said? Your words will have what?
Authority and
Authority
And power.
Are there instances in the Bible where people talk to mountains or trees and they obeyed? Or maybe not mountain and trees, but other inanimate objects.
Honey, Jesus, I know.
Fig tree.
Okay, Jesus talking to the fig tree, right?
No, Jesus
That's-
talked to the
Okay.
wind. He says the wind, stop the wind during the
What?
storm.
What's that?
The
When
boat.
Jesus speak to the wind, when
He
when
spoke to
there's
the
a
wind and the storm. Yes. And they
Yes.
stopped, right?
Mhm.
Very good example. Good. What about Joshua? Did Joshua talk to an inanimate object? You guys remember the story?
Mhm.
Joshua tells the sun to stand still.
stand
Yes.
still, yeah.
No, yeah.
Oh, was
Other-
that Joshua? Oh, I forget.
While the war was going on.
While the battle was going on and the sun was
Look.
going down, he told the
Yeah.
sun still.
Yes.
The sun stood still.
Moses,
Moses, what did Moses talk to?
the staff, and
He
the
talked to
rock.
the staff rock. Yeah, he was supposed to talk to the rock, but he didn't talk to it. He hit it, right?
And
But
also the staff turned to snake.
he talked to the snake.
No,
No.
the staff.
Where's
turned
Rod?
to- Oh, the rod, yeah.
I thought God did that.
He talked to the rod.
Oh, did it?
And he changed
Now
it
I
to a
forget.
snake.
No, he didn't talk to the rod.
Oh, okay.
That was all God doing.
Yeah,
He parted the sea.
Who?
he okay, but yeah, Moses was part of the sea with the rod, but he didn't talk to the sea. He didn't say,
He didn't
"See."
see.
We're talking
He
about
followed God's
instances,
direction.
instances where people spoke to something and it obeyed them. Okay, so Jesus talking to the storm, Jesus talking to the fig tree, Joshua talking to the sun, right? So in other words, how did the sun stand still when Joshua told the sun to stand still?
The sun died back, didn't it?
Because Joshua told the sun, stand still, right? So in these instances, just like Jesus says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, exercising our faith requires us to say something in order for something to happen, right? So here's what a commentator says. This is, I thought this was pretty neat what they said. It said, upon any occasion, if they think fit to say, be thou removed and cast into the sea, talking about the mountain, the Mount of Olives, which was many miles from Mount Olivet, must have been a very surprising performance for a mountain to be rooted up, so large as that was, and be carried several miles from his former situation, and be thrown into the sea. And yet, as difficult and amazing as this may seem, it shall be done. It is provided the person doubts not, or as it said in Mark, shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe all those things which he hath said shall come to pass. He shall have whatever he said. For this must not be confined to the particular instances of drying up a fig tree or removing a mountain, but the doing of any sort of miracle, how great soever it may be. It says, nor is it our Lord's meaning that they should do these particular things, nor is it certain that ever did, but his sense is that had they that faith, they should be able not only to do lesser miracles, as comparatively speaking, the withering of the fig tree was, but they should be able to perform things much more difficult and surprising. Whenever the good of the souls of men, the propagation of the gospel, and the glory of God required. So there is another instance, we're running out of time. There's another instance in the Bible that talks about moving mountains. So is it true that is it our faith that moves the mountains? Is it our words that we speak that moves things? What do you guys think?
Both. You have to have faith and action.
Okay,
Word-
but
Words without faith would be void.
okay. All right.
Faith without work is dead.
Okay, so
Basically, walking the talk.
okay, look at Job chapter 9, verse 1 through 8. Job chapter 9, I'll bring it up here. Job 9, 1 through 8. It says, Job is responding to God. Then Job answered and said, I know it is a truth, but how should man be just with God? If he will contend with him, he cannot answer him 1 of 1,000. He is wise in heart and strength. Who hath hardened himself against him and hath prospered? And notice, which removeth the what?
Mountains.
Mountain, and they know not, which overturneth them in his anger, which shaketh the earth out of her place, and the pillars thereof tremble, which commandeth the sun, and is rising not, and sealeth up the stars, which alone spreadeth out the heavens and treadeth upon the waves of the sea. So it talks about all the things that God can do. Among them is removing mountains.
Mm.
So if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, who is actually moving the mountains?
God.
God.
God. Is God moving the mountains? Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But what we need is, for that to happen, what do we need?
Faith.
Faith.
Mm.
Jesus said, we just need
Have faith.
seed like faith. Now, what did he mean by mustard seed like faith? Oh, everyone has to have a little bitty, itty bitty faith. Is that what he's talking about? No.
Um,
He's
Faith
talking about,
And do not doubt.
huh?
Faith that do not doubt.
Okay, so faith, the kind of faith that the mustard seed faith should be,
It's a quality
should-
of faith.
it should be,
A healthy seed.
no, listen.
Need to believe it.
Even one small, listen to me, even one small grain of quality, listen to me, quality, pure, believing, unadulterated, unrestrained, without a single shred or ounce of doubt, worry, or unbelief, is powerfully potent and has the potential to do more than supposed increased faith can.
Yes, Lord.
It's not the amount of faith, but the simple faith. True, simple, genuine faith can potentially make the impossible possible. Have you guys heard of nitroglycerin?
Yes.
Nitroglycerin. Did you know nitroglycerin, just one drop of it, explosive?
Mm.
One drop of nitroglycerin can make a huge explosion. Just one little drop. But can you imagine, in the spiritual sense, if we have one drop of nitrogen faith, one grain of mustard seed like faith that is potent without any mixture of doubt whatsoever, it doesn't matter how much faith you have, even if you have just that one little drop and grain of mustard seed like faith, that is quality faith,
Mm.
that can bring about great and impossible things.
Mhm.
I
It's
think
not-
we have things though, you know.
What was that?
I think we hedge our thoughts because we're afraid and we say, if God wills.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the
And people
problem.
do that to you when you start saying something. Well, is that God? Do you know that's God's will? Then you just back off because you say,
Yeah,
"Maybe."
yeah. Because you don't know. You don't know if it's God's will, right? So you back off because you don't know. But
Right.
but the question that I asked you earlier, is this meant to be taken literally or figuratively? That if we have mustard seed like faith, like true faith, that we can move mountains. Is that to be taken literal or is that figurative?
Both.
Yeah, it's the literal faith. You have
I
mustard.
believe it's both. I believe it's both. Yes, we can, like Joshua, cause the sun to stand still if it's God's will. We can move mountains if it's God's will, right? Those things are possible if we have this quality of faith, even as small as it may be, little quality of faith, like nitroglycerin. Or we can see that God can remove the obstacles like that Satan will put in our lives, and that can be removed.
Mm.
I believe it applies to both. If you see the stories of Pavel Goya, the stuff that he can testify that happened, amazing things, that's true faith right there. Right? You guys remember the story he talked about when the box with the glass was being brought up and like the box broke away and then the glass should have fell down and shattered, but it didn't. Like something was holding that glass up in place and all the people were watching. All these unbelieving people in communist Romania witnessed that thing. It was an impossible thing, but they witnessed it. And it could only be God that did that.
Yes.
I believe that if we have this grain of unadulterated, unrestrained by disbelief, faith, we can start seeing amazing things happen in our own lives. And God can use us if we have such a faith. And I think that's what Jesus is trying to tell us. If you have faith, just a grain of mustard seed, don't be fixated on, oh, that person has more faith than me, and that person's definitely going to have more faith. And already, what are you doing? You're making yourself doubt. You're making yourself feel like you are like that servant with the one talent, feeling like you don't amount to much, so therefore you can't accomplish much. But Jesus is saying, no, you have all that you need to make amazing things happen. I have given you a measure of faith. You may think it's small as a grain of mustard seed, but go with that. Go with that. Because you have enough to go with that to move mountains. Hebrews 11:6 says, but without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that order of those that diligently. In light of this text, it is very promising to have a grain of mustard seed like faith rather than without at all. So come to God with your mustard seed faith and believe he can move mountains and trees that are visible problems in your life.
Amen.
So may the Lord bless you. And I hope that this gave you a different perspective on mustard seed like faith.